Wondery Plus subscribers can listen to episodes of Cold Tapes early and ad-free right now. Join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Oh, Canada, a vast idyllic land filled with beavers, loons, lumberjacks, and polite, friendly folks. We have those things for sure, but there's a darker side to the Great White North, full of mystery, crime, the paranormal, and dark history. Join me, Mike Brown, and co-host Matthew Stockton every Monday for the Dark Poutine podcast as we tell dark stories from north of the 49th parallel with the Ottawa game covering more international cases. You can listen to Dark Poutine for free wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Hey, I'm Brooke. My friends and I perform spooky stories on our podcast 13. 13 is a movie for your ears with immersive sound design and music from our composer. And we're not reading you the same old ghost stories from Reddit. With original stories from our in-house writers and submissions from up-and-coming authors, 13 will make you smile, break your heart, and have you wishing for a nightlight. Atmospheric, slow burn, always spooky, and sometimes sexy. Our friends are some of the best voice actors and writers in our little corner of the podcast industry. So if you want to find out why those figures in black keep meeting by the water just before dawn, why you should never sleep in a room with an empty chair, or why you hear faint music echoing from the abandoned mall, join us by following 13 wherever you're listening right now. That's 13, the word, not the number, all spelled out. Bridget Howard keeps asking for my teeth. Wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay. Thank you for this. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate
Not at all.
that.
It's on my way home.
So you're aware this is being recorded so I can feed back to the team on the case.
Yes, I consented to that in my email.
Great. For the recording, the time is 17:46 on the 26th of June 2023. My name is DS Naveen Balsara. Please feel free to call me Naveen. And I'm talking with psychology expert...
Psychologist.
Psychologist.
There may be psychology experts, but that's not the same thing. I'm a chartered psychologist.
Sorry. Chartered psychologist, Dr. Karen Sengas. And how would you like to be addressed?
Karen's fine.
Okay, thank you, Karen. There's quite a lot to get through, and I know you have to leave.
I said to your team I have to be done by 6.
Okay, great, thanks.
Wedding anniversary.
Oh, I see, great. Cool, congratulations. Well, thanks for making the time to talk. And have you had time to familiarise yourself with the details of the case?
I've read through the files on Mark Rennick, yes.
Okay, great.
Where would you like to start?
First off, would you mind taking me through what you understand about winter over syndrome?
Well, this is an interesting one. I haven't come across winter over syndrome in the flesh, or polar overwintering syndrome, as it's sometimes known. It was something I was made aware of when I was doing a comprehensive study of seasonal affective disorder in Norwegian men. I've now had some time to familiarise myself further with this syndrome since you contacted me. So, to answer your question, in layman's terms, winter over syndrome is a psychological condition that can affect individuals stationed in Arctic bases during the long, isolated winter months. It can lead to a range of emotional and behavioural changes in said individual, which I'll go on to discuss, particularly with regard to the account of Mr. Rennick's behavioural changes. I'll start with just a brief background, if that's helpful.
It is, yes, thank you.
As with parts of Norway, the Arctic regions are notorious for their extreme weather conditions, prolonged darkness and isolation. During winter, the sun remains below the horizon for months, leading to a phenomenon known as the polar night. This is when there's darkness 24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. The absence of natural light can disrupt the circadian rhythm.
Okay, sorry, Doctor. Trying to catch up. Could you just explain that last bit just in a little bit more?
Yes, I was going on to say that this affects the production of melatonin, the hormone that regulates sleep patterns and mood. This disruption of the circadian rhythm can trigger symptoms associated with winter over syndrome. Uh-huh. It's important to stress here that winter over syndrome, like seasonal affective disorder, is never a given. It doesn't affect everyone. It can target certain people, sometimes with underlying health conditions, with a history of mental health issues, depressive issues, people on certain medications. Genetics can be a factor. It is more common in people that have experienced it before, and like SAD, it is more common in men. But it can also appear in individuals with none of these contributing factors. With me so far?
Yep.
Bringing this back to the individual in question, Mr. Rennick, and I have to stress on record that I can only go by the medical records I've had access to. I haven't examined or interviewed the person in question.
No, that's understood.
As reported, Mr. Rennick experienced a sudden, violent outburst of rage. This was a prolonged but largely isolated episode before he was restrained and then sedated. This post-sedation is part of base protocol, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
There were no reported warning signs or build-up of symptoms, so I'm assuming Mr. Rennick's presentation of symptoms leading to this episode or outburst were either below the radar or non-existent. They certainly were unreported by the doctor on base or anyone else, unless I'm mistaken.
No, you're correct.
Now, what you'd normally expect to see with individuals experiencing winter over syndrome would be a gradual presentation of symptoms. Symptoms like low mood, depression, anxiety, irritability, and fatigue. Long periods of darkness and confinement can lead to feelings of isolation, helplessness, and hopelessness.
Right.
None of these were spotted by the medic on base, nor did Mr. Rennick visit the medic on base to discuss.
No, correct again.
Now, not everyone is able to spot their own changes in mood. Men, in particular, are slow to seek medical help when these symptoms start to present. So, again, Mr. Rennick may have been experiencing these symptoms, but either failed to spot them in himself and seek medical help, or confide in a friend or colleague. And these are often hidden symptoms, which others may not spot.
Sorry, could you explain what you mean by hidden symptoms?
A bleeding finger, a bruise, those are obvious external symptoms of a medical problem.
Yeah.
Mood changes are not.
Okay, right.
Having said that, there are more obvious symptoms that others could have noticed. Total absence of sunlight can make it extremely difficult to distinguish between night and day, sometimes causing sleep disturbance and disorientation. Mr. Rennick might have been experiencing disrupted sleep, waking hours during the night, drowsiness during the day, but none have been reported.
Well, he slept alone.
And wasn't prone to walking around at night when others were sleeping?
As far as I'm aware, the lights go off on the base at night to give the impression of nighttime.
He could have just stayed in his room with a nightlight on, maybe. Just giving you a scenario where an external symptom might have been missed.
But yes, I can see your point. Nobody reported him up during the night, though. That hasn't come up.
Likewise, another external symptom could be disorientation. This largely comes from a lack of sleep and a kind of jet lag from the disruption of circadian rhythms.
I see. And so what does that disorientation, like, what does that look like in a person?
An inability to focus attention, being slow and uncertain, mumbling, not making sense, inability to recognise people, agitation, sometimes hallucinations. No signs of disorientation were recorded.
No, only during and after the outburst.
Right. Now, looking at base protocol, there are a number of steps taken on the base to mitigate the impact of wintering over, and Mr. Rennick was actively involved in those steps.
I see. What were those steps?
Things like maintaining a regular routine. Mark would eat meals at regular times with his colleagues. I haven't seen any evidence to the contrary, so maybe that's an assumption worth checking. But these regular activities help establish a sense of normalcy and stability, and keep circadian rhythms in check. Likewise, physical activity. There weren't logs kept on gym use, but his own work was physical in nature, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Might his work have taken him outdoors?
It may have done, but I can confirm with you.
Any physical activity can help combat the lethargy and boost mood. Outdoor activities, sport, walking, even physical work can create endorphin boosts.
Okay, I can check on his indoor and outdoor physical activity, thank you.
Likewise, creating opportunities for social interaction and fostering a sense of community through group activities. Shared meals, games nights, films nights. These can also boost endorphins, lift moods, and help waylay winter over syndrome. From what I've read, Bowers Wilson have all of these on offer on a daily basis. It's worth checking if Mark was an active participant in those activities.
Okay, will do.
For our purposes, I'll assume he was. There's no evidence or report he had withdrawn from the group in this way. It's also important to check whether he was in regular contact with home.
I don't know offhand.
Did he use social media? Did he manage to stay in touch with family and the outside world? This again would maintain a sense of normalcy. Regular communication with family and friends can provide emotional support and alleviate feelings of isolation.
Great. I can check on that as well.
Perhaps if people hadn't noticed him withdrawing on base, then friends or family may have noticed a reduction in communication from him or a sense of lower mood from him.
I'll get on that as well.
I also noticed that light therapy is available on base for any individual who needs it. This is again to help mitigate the effects of winter over syndrome. Mark did not access light therapy as far as I'm aware. Now, this could be because he didn't need it or because he failed to alert someone that he might need it. But anyway, that therapy is there should someone need it.
Again, I'll check on that, but neither the doctor on base nor the psychologist had mentioned any use of a light box for Mr. Rennick.
I also note that Keone Industries provides information on winter over syndrome. It's hard to know whether Mr. Rennick had read those sections and taken those red flags on board.
Well, he had signed all of his health forms.
Then we might have to assume he read those forms. Then again, who hasn't glazed over when a flight attendant goes over the safety demonstration?
Guilty as charged.
Exactly. And it wasn't his first time doing this, so you might also assume he'd skip the small print if he felt he knew it all already.
Yes, that would appear to be a possibility. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you straight here. Do you think then that Mark Rennick wasn't suffering from winter rover syndrome?
I'm saying he didn't display the normal slide into symptoms you'd expect. He didn't alert anyone to it, despite being aware of the possibility of winter rover syndrome, nor did anyone else around him flag any symptoms. He also didn't try to access any additional help, although readily available. Now, either he was experiencing those build-up of symptoms internally and they were masked incredibly well, or he wasn't experiencing them at all.
And what would you say, in your professional opinion?
Well, on the evidence I have alone, I'm afraid I can't answer that.
Okay.
What we have as evidence is a seemingly out-of-the-blue psychotic episode. So with the remaining time we have, I'd like to look at other factors that may have contributed to that.
Okay, good idea.
Looking back over Mr. Rennick's medical records, he was treated for PTSD.
Correct, yeah.
Following a tour in the military. I have worked with patients, both military and ex-military, that have suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. Like winter rover syndrome, it has a range of symptoms. These include flashbacks, poor sleep, irritability, low mood, withdrawal, violent outbursts, engaging in risky, reckless or destructive behaviour.
That sounds more like what people witness in the games room.
Now, Mr. Rennick received both talking therapy and equine therapy and had been taking a prescription of SSRI, sertraline. According to these medical records, he responded well to treatment and his recovery from PTSD was signed off by a physician. He stopped taking the SSRI, albeit a little too suddenly. It doesn't look like he weaned himself off. Anyway, that was some time ago.
So it can't be drug withdrawal.
That long ago? Definitely not from sertraline.
Well, he made a declaration of his PTSD in his medical records, but told Dr. Andrew Fairfield, that's the victim, that he didn't think the PTSD was an issue anymore.
Yes, I read that. And in most cases, PTSD will resolve, largely within a year. However, sometimes it can reoccur or be triggered, even in those that have been treated and recovered.
Okay, under what circumstances?
Under similar circumstances to the thing that originally caused it. Or something else could trigger it entirely, most commonly stress-related.
Do you think that being in the extreme conditions of Antarctica might have triggered?
Could have done. I'm not aware of the exact inciting incident or situation surrounding Mr. Rennick's PTSD, but being in a barrack-style situation, isolated from friends and family, away from your everyday life, in a hostile environment, it could be a possibility.
But Mr. Rennick had wintered over a number of times. He was used to it. Seemed to enjoy them, even. He never experienced a psychotic breakdown before, so why would he be triggered now?
There's good evidence that activity in the sympathetic nervous system is chronically increased following PTSD.
Sorry, Doctor. I don't
In
quite...
basic terms, that means that people who suffer from, or have in some cases recovered from, PTSD are always in a perpetual state of fight or flight mode,
I see.
whether they think they are or not.
Okay. What about the other way around?
How do you mean?
Well, could PTSD have triggered winter rover syndrome?
Well, people with PTSD often have co-occurring conditions. Depression, substance misuse, one of the many anxiety disorders. They could absolutely coexist. Could PTSD have triggered it? Hard to know. It's so niche there wouldn't be any studies on it, and so far we have a sample size of one potential candidate.
Right, okay.
So if I was asked to stand up in court and answer that question, I'd say it's a possibility, but I have no probability for it due to lack of studies.
Gotcha, okay.
And then you look at the evidence. No real warning signs of either, no build-up of symptoms. Could it be a non-textbook presentation of winter rover syndrome? Or an unlikely recurrence of well-treated PTSD? Hard to say.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Sorry if that's a frustrating answer, but when you look at the majority of human psychological behaviour, it normally fits a pattern. A change in that pattern, an outlier, will have a reason.
Well, the victim, Dr. Fairfield, suspected that Mark wasn't suffering from winter rover syndrome. He thought someone may have drugged Mark, which caused the sudden onset of symptoms.
Is there any evidence of that?
Not to our knowledge.
He wasn't on any prescribed medication.
No, like you say, he'd stopped his prescription some time ago.
Could he have access to any psychoactives on base?
They'd be under lock and key, and no sign of the medical cupboard being plundered.
What about illegal drugs?
Yes, hard to get any of the crew to open up about drug use on the base, understandable, but as far as we know, someone brought some cocaine with them, which was all used up on the first night.
can't be that then. Cannabis?
Don't know for sure, but you'd have to go outside for a smoke, so other people would have noticed that.
Have bloods been done?
Yes, they came back clean, but the doctor on base says she's limited on the type of screening she can do.
But from the test she did, they came back clean?
Yes, that's correct.
Sorry.
Oh.
That's telling me I need to leave in a bit. I can put you in touch with a toxicologist.
Oh, that's okay, we have one.
You'd need to speak to them about drug-induced psychosis. In my experience, misuse of drugs, recreational or pharmaceutical, can exacerbate PTSD symptoms. You'd have to speak to someone about winter over syndrome and drug use.
Mm-hmm.
There's no known misuse of drugs, though. Why would the victim have come to that conclusion?
I think he felt the winter over came on too suddenly.
Well, I'm with him on that. So look, I'm going to have to wrap this up.
No, of course.
Anything more you need to ask?
No, I think that's all. And thank you again for your input, Doctor.
No problem. Any follow-up questions, do drop me a line.
I will do, thank you. I'll just stop the recording.
Go ad-free and get the full experience. Visit coldtapes.com now.